Once again, the Saints look lifeless on offense, lifeless on defense, and unfortunately us fans have to accept that this is a very, very bleak outlook for the franchise. We'll talk about this game and what's to come for the Saints right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Houdat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosvoglu, and as always, the Straight Up Saints podcast is brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. You've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, hurt offshore, Scott Vicknair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. If you were asking for a Saints win for Christmas or hoping the Saints would give you some positivity going into the new year, you got none of it. Instead, you got a 25-10 loss to the Raiders. You got maybe the most embarrassing performance of the season for a multitude of reasons. Let's start off with just the facts. The Raiders landed in New Orleans at 1 a.m. because of delays and travel restrictions. 1 a.m. they landed in New Orleans, which means you got a game 11 hours later. By the time you get situated, you sleep. By the time you wake up, how much rest do you possibly have for this game? And forget about just the travel situation. So let's take out the fact that they got to New Orleans at 1 a.m. and they didn't have much time to really rest before this game. They were a 3-win team coming into this and the worst rushing team in the NFL. There was not a single ground attack worse than the Raiders coming into this game. And yet the Raiders, despite having minimal talent on offense, despite having a horrible year, go into New Orleans, dominate time of possession, dominate total yards, dominate every statistic you need, winning the turnover battle, being the more physical team. And they make the Saints look like a team that you'd be thinking, all right, well, they're this bad, but they could be picking first. No, you're still stuck at the 10th pick. Doesn't matter if the Saints keep losing. They could lose next week. They'll still be stuck at that 10th pick. And right now, we could talk about the draft pick. We could talk about the future in just a little bit. If we're just talking about living in the moment, what we see from the Saints right now, we are seeing a team that doesn't have a quarterback of the future that you can feel confident about, that doesn't have a lot of playmakers because unfortunately Olave, Shaheed, and Alvin are hurt right now. So when you take them out of the equation, it's a bunch of players that can't catch the fucking football. I mean, how many guys today dropped? It was ridiculous. If it wasn't Prentice, it was Jawan. If it wasn't Jawan, it was Kevin Austin. If it wasn't Kevin Austin, it was MVS. So you couldn't really trust those guys. So you don't have the playmakers. But the biggest sin for this team, the biggest issue I have watching this team is I expect the offense to be bad with their playmakers out. I expect a rookie quarterback to make a lot of mistakes. What I don't expect or I don't think should happen is a defense with tons of experience look as deflated as they do. Because I've accepted that the Saints are old and slow defensively. I accepted it a couple of months ago. But the lack of effort from a tackling perspective is pathetic. And the fact that you can play a Raiders team that comes in with Amir Abdullah and Aiden O'Connell and they light your ass up, that is unacceptable. And unfortunately right now, with the way the Saints are built, it's going to take years to fix everything because they need 2 edge rushers. They need another defensive tackle to put next to Brian Brzee, preferably one that can stop the run because they can't stop the run as we saw today. Demario Davis, Saints legend in my book, excellent player, got better with age, but Father Time is undefeated, and we finally found a worthy opponent for Father Time, and his ass still isn't going to lose because finally Demario Davis looks like a player that everything's happening just a step too fast for him now when that was never the case. Safeties, I mean, are you kidding me? There's not much to look at with the safety group they have. Tyrann Mathieu, just an elite player in terms of his career. He's not that guy anymore. And you don't have that youngster at safety that you feel confident leading that position group. Cornerback, I mean, Alontae Taylor, can we just call it what he is? He's not an outside cornerback. He's bad. So the Saints have a lot of just negative on that side of the ball. And then offensively, right? Like I'll get excited about watching some players. I'll get excited to say, hey, let's see what Kendra Miller can do. And he gets hurt again. So like, what can you look at with this team and get excited about? Offensive line was sloppy at times. You know, in terms of a schematic standpoint, I don't think Kubiak does anything exciting. He had one fucking trick play, whoop-de-doo. He's done that twice in the last 3 weeks. And outside of that, they can't score the ball. So if he doesn't pull a trick play out, that frankly only happens because The Saints just run the ball up the middle 55 fucking times, and then they finally do something different and it throws you off guard. He can't do anything. And it's the same thing every single time. Saints play well in the first half offensively, and then second half, they just look like they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And that is Kubiak regardless of who his quarterback is. And it's a him problem, which is hilarious because we go back to week 2. We got people going, oh, they look good against Dallas. I'm nervous. What if he leaves for a different team? Yeah, he's got to go on LinkedIn and look for where his next job is right now because it sure as hell ain't going to be in New Orleans. So this team right now is so fucking broken. And the only saving grace, honestly, is that there's one game left. One more game left of watching this iteration of the Saints. And I don't know, it might get worse before it gets better. It's definitely possible. But at least we have one more game of watching this particular team because they are not fun to watch at all. So we're going to talk about Spencer Rattler and his inconsistent day because, man, what was supposed to be a silver lining has taken a huge hit. Before I do that, though, I want to get a quick word from Scott Vicknair.
And Jonathan Williams brings it all the way back from the 20-yard line.
What a terrific way to end the first half.
And tonight's game is brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Attorneys. They always fight for the win.
You mean attorney? It's one lawyer. Scott Vicknair?
No, there's two.
Brad Scott and David Vicknair.
Well, it's confusing.
That it is. They could have picked a better name.
Scott Vicknair Injury Attorneys. We fight for the win.
Once again, thank you to Scott Vicknair for being part of the program. We greatly appreciate it. Going to keep it rolling here on the Straight Up Saints podcast. Truthfully, guys, going into the second half, I wasn't expecting a Saints win, but I thought I'd be able to say, hey, your rookie quarterback looked really good, though, and that is something to kind of hang your hat on and get excited for the final game of the season and maybe even the offseason. And yet the same thing happened with Spencer Rattler that we've unfortunately seen every game that he's played this year outside of the relief duty against the Washington Commanders, which is fun first half, looks really sharp, 11 of 13, 146 yards, and yet 11 and 13 quickly becomes 17 of 30 with 2 interceptions. And now, I want to be fair. It's not all his fault. I think there were a lot of throws that were dropped. I think he didn't get a lot of help from his playmakers. But the 2 complaints I have with Spencer Rattler came up today again. The first one being, doesn't see the blitz that well. Second, doesn't know how to change up the speed of which he throws the football. Everything is a 98-mile-an-hour fastball instead of throwing something a little off speed. For example, you're going screen to Adam Prentice. He fucking lasers the football at him. Dude, you got to throw that a little bit softer. And the one thing that's funny is Rattler's ability to kind of zip the football is what stands out about him, right? Like on that trick play touchdown, that's a deep throw because he's going from the left side of the field all the way to the right corner. And that's impressive. And his ability to just kind of flick it and let it, rock off his hand is insane. But you can't be throwing the football with that much velocity every single time. There's got to be some throws that have a little bit off of it, and I just don't think he's a quarterback that's going to make those layered throws, that's going to be able to kind of drop it in more so from touch instead of just having, velocity. So those concerns to me came up again. Does this mean that Rattler will never be a starter? Absolutely not. Does it mean that I'm officially out on him? No. But when you keep making the same mistakes over, that seems to just be who you are as a quarterback, as opposed to saying, oh, it's all the Saints' fault. And look, supporting cast isn't great. I don't think he's got a great OC. And those are things that matter, right? I think a lot of quarterbacks that succeed in this league, you either have a really good supporting cast or you have a really good coach. And if you're really fortunate, you got both. And Rattler right now has neither. And that does matter. And I do take that into consideration. But it is definitely frustrating that what I thought was going to be a silver lining, which was Rattler's play, deteriorated so quickly. Couple of drops in the second half, wasn't blaming him. But the interception, everyone's blaming Cedric Wilson. He threw the ball way too high. And that ball's got to be lowered down. Ends up getting tipped, intercepted. And then the interception at the end of the game, it's frustrating, right? You get a nice throw to Juwan. You're in, inside the 5. Maybe you tack on a touchdown. It'd be a garbage time touchdown, but at least it's something to give you confidence. Offensive pass interference on Juwan. Next play, pick, really bad throw from Spencer. So stuff like that is frustrating. Don't get me wrong. I think at this point, I'm just kind of deflated from a fan perspective that it doesn't bother me as much as maybe it would have a couple years ago. But this is the truth for the Saints. It's been that type of season that, you want to really hang your hat on something and be optimistic. And that one thing that gives you a little glimmer of hope gets kind of snuffed out as quick as possible. And that was kind of the case for Spencer Rattler today. Just, when you go 11 of 13 in the first half and you finish the game, going 6 of 17 in the second half, that to me is just very disappointing and kind of defeats everything that you were ready to build up. So before we get into fan Q&A, talk about everything you guys have to say, which as always, I encourage you guys, if you enjoy our content, to give this video a like. It really helps out the channel, and also leave your comments because I'll get through everyone's before we eventually wrap up this show. I just want to talk about where the Saints are at right now. I know I talked about them being broken and everything that's not working. I think the reality is a loss like this has to wake up ownership, because everyone on Twitter is so torn apart right now. It is either, the people who hate this team and say everything sucks. And to some degree, I kind of fall in that category, right? I am a big, I don't want to say big believer, but I am a big proponent of saying the Saints are in a situation where it's very bleak right now. I don't see a lot of optimism. I don't know what is going to get them out of this. I know that good coaching, good management, good draft, like that is what helps you. But I don't know how the Saints get there right now, because they're run by Mickey Loomis still. They have a front office and a power group, I would say, that just is set in their ways. For me, though, I am hopeful, and maybe it's just illusion, that a loss like today against a team that only had 3 wins coming into this one, against a team that was in position for possibly getting a number 1 pick, they blow you out at home. Their fans take over your building, and that is the last time you'll be in the Caesars Superdome until next season. So when that is the lasting image of a 3-win team that can't run the football, yet managed to run all over your sorry team in your dome, I wonder if that is the straw that breaks the camel's back, where the Saints go into the offseason and say, you know what? I know we're $80 million over the cap. I know we have a really bleak outlook from a roster perspective, and it might not be the most appealing job in the world to sell to a GM and to a coach. But God damn it, we got to make a move. Then I don't know what will. Because if this doesn't tell ownership that shit has to change, and I'm not just talking about coaching staff, I'm not just talking about coach, I'm talking about management needs to change, the front office needs to change, then we are fucked as a fan base, because we are just going to get the same shit thrown in our face year after year after year. And I'm not one of those people who is super anti-Mickey Loomis or pro-Mickey Loomis. I don't know how the fuck you're pro-Mickey Loomis at this point. That's a you problem more than anything. I don't know how you can keep running this shit back, because it's very clear that Sean Payton and Drew Brees made the Saints. And the faster they freaking just acknowledge that and say, you know what, we need new voices in the building, the better we'll be all for it. But if this loss doesn't change their opinion and their goal is go into the offseason, let Loomis pick a coach and go from there, we are all fucked. And I don't care who he picks, because if the top part is broken, no one's fixing that. No one's fixing that below the chain. It's got to be fixed at the top. And right now, with this team, yes, they need a new quarterback. Yes, they need a new defensive line. Yes, they need a new secondary. Yes, they need help with the linebacker group. They need new playmakers. They need a new offensive guard. They need a lot of help. They need a new head coach. But they need a front office that isn't set in their ways. And there needs to be consequences for the fact that this Saints team has no future ahead of them and doesn't have a lot of players that you can get excited about, because they're bad teams in this league. The Giants are a bad team. And yet, if you're a Giants fan, you walked away from today. Granted, you're going to be crying that they don't have the number 1 pick now because they blew their tank. You have Malik Neighbors. What the fuck do the Saints have right now to get excited about? Don't tell me Brian Brzee, when as good as Brian Brzee as a pass rusher is, he's equally bad as a run stuffer. I don't want to hear it right now. Like, that's not the piece that gets me excited. Don't tell me Chris Olave, when I love Chris Olave, he is not playing right now. He's not playing football. And unfortunately, the poor guy is another concussion away from us having a very, very serious conversation about whether he should play football again. So you can't sell me on that. You can't sell me on the offensive line, because Eric McCoy has been hurt this season. Fuaga has been inconsistent this year. Penning is all over the fucking place. You can't sell me on the offensive line despite investing first-round pick after first-round pick after first-round pick. You can't sell me on the defensive line despite investing first-round pick and second-round picks. Isaiah Foskey, where the fuck is that dude? Never see him. Peyton Turner got hurt again. Shocker. So who is going to pay the price for the Saints squandering draft picks? Peyton Turner fucking sucks. Cesar Ruiz fucking sucks. Isaiah Foskey, can't even say he sucks because I don't even know what the fuck he looks like because he never fucking plays. He's terrible. Kendra Miller, I think he's talented. But guess what? He's got as many injuries as he does career fucking carries at this point. So he never plays. Sal DeVeri, hurt. Alante Taylor, good in the slot, sucks at cornerback on the outside. So what are we hanging our hat on? What are we hanging our hat on? Who's responsible for that? The Raiders, who suck, can at least be like, hey, Brock Bowers is fucking awesome. What do us Saints fans have to get excited about? Seriously. Alvin's probably our saving grace, and we only got 2 more years left to enjoy Alvin Kamara before he hangs it up. And even then, it's going to be an insulting 2 years because all I could get in my head is that they've squandered that championship core and never got it done when you knew you had the pieces in place. So everything's got to go, and I don't want to see anything else. If they keep the GM and they get a coaching hire, I can't be fully excited about that coaching hire because of who made that pick. Because that same dude looked us all in the eyes and said Dennis Allen, who stunk with the Raiders, was the guy for the Saints. And when he stunk with the Saints, instead of admitting your mistake, you said, I think he's a great head coach, and it was the injuries that fucked it over. Man, fuck you, because that's not the truth. And you know that's not the truth. He's a bad head coach. So this is what we're stuck with, and I don't know how it gets fixed unless Gail Benson comes from the top down and says, hey, everyone get the fuck out, because this is not an acceptable product. And I'm telling you from now, ticket prices are going to get lower. People are not going to go to games. This is how it's going to be for the next couple of years because the Saints are going to be bad for the next few seasons. And I'm telling you, you want to say I'm negative, you want to say I'm being a pessimistic asshole, you call me whatever the fuck you want. I really don't care anymore. It's an unacceptable product to watch them get bullied by the goddamn Raiders in their own building. It's pathetic. It's a joke. And I'm tired of it. I'm genuinely tired of watching this Saints team with the people in the power for this ownership group. I fucking hate it. It's a joke. So I'm done ranting. It's been a while. Let's get to what you guys have to say here because I'm out of breath over here. Let's get over to our fan Q&A presented by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer because, God damn it, I am not happy right now at all. Let's go with Derek Super Chat here. Thank you for the support. Derek says interior line on both sides are bad. It is bad, Derek. It is. Second half just kept blitzing. Had no answer for the blitz. Couldn't get any pressure on Aiden O'Connell, so that was fun. And the worst part about that, you talk about the interior for this team, they've invested. Offensive line, you've invested. Cesar Ruiz is not good. You drafted Saldivari, drafted McCoy. McCoy, unfortunately, is hurt right now. Defensive line on the interior, you drafted Brzee. Again, I'm not going to be super critical of Brzee because he's a great pass rusher, but he's not a good run stuffer. And then in an offseason last year where you're supposed to revamp the defense tackle group, you signed Nathan Shepard and you signed Colin Saunders. And frankly, those two dudes are just in to get cardio and maybe an occasional fun play where Colin Saunders does something fun like getting an interception. But that's it. Like the defensive line and the O-line, they've invested money and draft picks, and the production they're getting for it is just not worth it. It's not worth the return on your investment, and they're not getting any return on it. Got a super chat here from Joby Miller. Says, thank you for the support, by the way. Says, we need playmakers everywhere. Long rebuild ahead. Yep. It's the truth of the matter. Even if Olave and Shaheed were playing, guys, I would say the same thing. It's not enough. And, I had this complaint last draft. I know the Saints needed Fuaga, and they needed help. New Orleans, though, got Olave and Shaheed in the building, and they were like, I think we're good. It doesn't work that way. Like, every team in the NFL that has playmakers adds more playmakers every single time. And you need 4 to 5 guys that can step up on your team. Like, if I watch the Packers on any given Sunday, it might be Jaden Reed that plays well. And then the next Sunday, it might be Romeo Doubs. And if it's not Romeo Doubs, it's Christian Watson. If it's not Christian Watson, it's Dontavian Wicks. If it's not Dontavian Wicks, it's Tucker Kraft. Like, you need depth. You go watch the Vikings today. It's not going to be just the Justin Jefferson show. TJ Hawkinson's a great tight end. Jordan Addison's a great number 2. Aaron Jones, a really good do-it-all running back. Like, you need, in my opinion, 4 good weapons to have to kind of be in that conversation. Even the Bills, right? Because everyone's on the Josh Allen MVP train, and it is what it is. Like, I don't know if I would give it to him, but that's a different conversation for a different story. They don't have, let's say, the elite number 1, but you have Amari Cooper. You have, you have Khalil Shakir. You have Dalton Kincaid. You have Keon Coleman, who I think is going to get better. Like, they have pieces. They don't have great pieces, but there's a couple different weapons here. Saints was always Olave and Shaheed, okay, with Taysom, who I love, but Taysom's more of a gadget type guy, and then Alvin. And Olave and Shaheed, where's the physical dude? Where's the physical one? It's not from your tight end group. That's for damn sure. They don't get anything from that group if it's not Foster Moreau. So it's just really, really frustrating. I agree with you wholeheartedly. They need help everywhere. Cliff with the super chat. Thank you for the support. Cliff says, appreciate the show, keeping it real and letting us vent during this shit show of the season. First off, thank you again for the super chat, Cliff. I greatly appreciate it. Yeah, look, if If it's too negative, it's too negative. It is what it is. I'm going to speak from the heart. And right now, I'm disgusted watching the Saints team. They're bad. They're very, very, very bad. They don't do anything that excites me. Whether it's running the football, whether it's stopping the run, whether it's rushing the passer, whether it's, big plays in the passing game. Where's the identity of this team besides sucking ass? Like, that's the identity of this team. So, I'm going to keep it as real as I can and speak from the heart because I think that's the only way I know how to do this. And hopefully, and it might not always work, but if you guys get your comments off and you're able to have your voice be heard and that helps you vent a little bit, then I'm doing my job. That's hopefully what I'm getting at. But just a really, really frustrating season, man. Really frustrating season. And thankfully, one more game left. Jacob says, it's even more depressing in person. Jacob, I can't even imagine, man. I can't even imagine how depressing it is in person. Forgive says, empty stadium, trash OC, 0 defensive starters. If they get played on any other team and getting blown out by the Raiders at home, the GM still wants to stick with familiarity. It's sad when your 5th-round rookie quarterback who threw 2 interceptions was your best player of the day by a wide margin. Yeah, not wrong about that. I mean, and even him, like, to say best is kind of tough with the way he played, but that's the truth, right? Like, who you're going to say had a great game today? Who are you going to say had a great game today? I don't know. Zachary Fitzsimmons with a super chat. Thank you for the support. Zachary says, where do they start? What contracts do they cut? Team literally doesn't have a receiver over 400 yards, no QB, old running back, old defense. I'm gutted, man. I think that's the most frustrating part, Zachary. They can't even do, like, where some teams just cut players and they're shedding money. Like, I think the Chargers would be a good example, right? Got rid of Mike Williams, got rid of Keenan Allen, but they were saving money making those cuts. The Saints aren't going to save any money from cutting dudes on their team. So you're kind of stuck with the same roster. And the only way to get out of this for next season is by drafting well. It's the only way. And if they don't do that, they're screwed. So that's where they are. And that's what makes this so depressing. They can't just cut bait with half these guys and say they're in a good spot. They're probably going to need Cam Jordan to retire. You're probably going to need Tyrann Mathieu or Demario Davis to step away. And if not, the two of them got to take pay cuts because what they're playing on is ridiculous. You gave Pete Werner a big contract. I don't know. I'm not seeing enough from Pete Werner to warrant that contract. You don't know what you got at cornerback because Alontae Taylor's regressed in a big way, okay? Offensive line-wise, you got to hope McCoy's healthy. Like, that's the key, right? If McCoy's healthy, it looks like a different group. But there's just not a lot to like right now. Taysom Hill, I've always defended his contract. I think everyone overreacted for no fucking reason when the Saints are a significantly better team with him on the field as opposed to not having him and people complaining about $10 million a year. I don't get it. Like, there's worse players getting paid way more. So I didn't mind that. But now, coming off a really bad knee injury and he's going to be 35, I don't know. Maybe he has to take a pay cut. But, you paid Nathan Shepard. He's useless. You paid Colin Saunders. He's useless. You paid Jamal Williams. He's useless. These are deals that you didn't need to make. Derek Carr, you can cut him. You're not gaining anything from cutting him. And I talked about this a couple shows ago. Like, you're probably keeping him on the roster for one more team just for that purpose. Like, getting rid of Carr doesn't save you financially. Derek with another super chat. Thank you for the support. Derek says, do we even have linebackers outside of Pete Werner? Yeah, look, they brought in Willie Gay. There's moments where he looks good and there's moments where he just looks out of position. And I think for the Saints, remember, before they got DeMario, there's a gap between not having a linebacker. Like, there's Vilma, who was great, and then a bunch of guys that never worked, whether it was Stephon Anthony, whether it was Curtis Lofton, who had like a couple of good games, and that was it. Like, it wasn't working. You bring in Nate Stupar, and if it's not him, who the fuck else? I mean, Anzalone was okay, but I think he's played better since leaving the Saints. You haven't really had that linebacker, so you had DeMario holding down the fort for so long. You've been trying to find that successor. You haven't really gotten him. But Pete Werner's got to play better football, but it's also, to me, I don't know. How much is it on Pete Werner? How much is it on this whole front seven? Just not good enough. So when it's not good enough, everyone's going to get exposed. And maybe that is what we're at. But I don't know. It's a very bleak outlook for that position group. And it's something that I've kind of felt this entire season because I feel like DeMario's just been getting worse and worse. Xavier says, might be worst I've witnessed the defense play all year, and that says a lot. Also, Rattler may not have played well in the second, but no one else really came to his aid either. Yeah, look, it's what I said about a couple minutes ago. Who's the player of the game? Who's the player of the game? Honestly, because you can lose a game and be like, oh, that's the player of the game. Who the fuck is the player of the game? Who deserves it? The punter, I guess? He had one really good punt. Blair says, just pain. The one silver lining in the first half was Rattler and completely erased in the second because of the blitzing. Yep. No question about it. Yahtzee says, in 3 years, Loomis and Allen destroyed a legitimate NFL powerhouse. Going to be a long, long time before we're relevant, especially if that idiot Loomis is in charge. I agree with you. Yahtzee also says, Rattler ain't the future and wish we would stop pretending he is the future quarterback of this team. Ain't on the roster. That's where I'm at. I tweeted before, no quarterback, no front office, no coach, no QB of the future. Like, there's not one right now that excites me. Easy37 says, imagine being a franchise that has so much connection with the Raiders and other AFC West teams and getting swept by that entire division. I didn't even think about that. You got your ass kicked by the Broncos. You got your ass kicked by the Chiefs. You got your ass kicked by the Chargers. You got your ass kicked by the Raiders. Saving grace that they play in the NFC South, right? Yeah, it says that is pretty depressing. Yep. Half-Life says letting a 3-12 Raiders team run all over you is a new low. Yeah, it says, well, Loomis and Allen wanted to rebuild the Raiders here. They did. And they got their wish. Got a super chat here from KJB412. Says, I don't want Mickey anywhere near a rebuild. He has no right to hire the next head coach, especially drafting the next group. Still hanging his hat on 2017. I agree. And you know what? There's going to be some people that tell you Mickey Loomis is a great GM. There's going to be some people that says he deserves a chance for a do-over. Fuck that. Because if you can't pick the right head coach, the bare minimum you need to do is draft a good team. But if you pull up Saints rosters year in, year out, their draft picks year in, year out, it's not great. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go through the Saints drafts real quick. I'm not going to even include this year yet because the book is not written on these dudes. Let's see how they play out. But last year's draft, A.T. Perry already gone. Jordan Howden, useless. Jake Haener, we saw what happened. He's not good. Nick Saldiveri, hurt, doesn't play. Kendra Miller, hurt, doesn't play. Isaiah Foskey just doesn't play. So Brian Brzee, 1 pick out of 7. Great job. Now we go to 2022. Olave, Trevor Penning, Alante Taylor, cool. DeMarco Jackson, fine. Jordan Jackson, don't play. Never played. So I'm cool with 2022. I can live with 2022. 2021, Peyton Turner, great job whiffing on that one. Pete Werner, okay, not special. Paulson Debo, I think a pretty good player, but he's hurt right now. Ian Book, useless. Landon Young, useless. Kawan Baker, useless. 2020, Cesar Ruiz, Adam Troutman, Zach Ball, Tommy Stevens. Great job. Great job on that one. The best player is Zach Ball, and guess what? His best year is not on your team. So I just don't know how we can let Loomis get another run. And yet, he probably will. It's just embarrassing that we've reached this point. I don't understand how this organization thinks it's okay what they're trotting out there. It's a fucking joke. Dr. Williams says, wow, everybody in this organization needs to be fired. Ridiculous. Manuel says, went to the game today, came from California. The best thing about today's game was the chicken tenders at halftime. We are god-awful. Defense is atrocious. I hope you enjoyed the chicken fingers, though, man. At the bare minimum, you better get good food when you're there. So if you're not gonna get a win when you visit New Orleans, you better get some good food. Yachi says, I don't know how you can look at this roster and not fire Loomis. I agree. Saints 41 says, yep, the Saints are one of the worst teams in the NFL. If they're not number one already, they're vying for it. Shane O'Mac says, I agree, it's dark times, but this is modern NFL. If you get the right people in place, it can turn. Look what Peyton did with us post-Katrina, and look at other examples around the league. I don't debate that at all. I think you're absolutely right. It can turn. I think the Saints are in such a hole, though, that you have to give up like 2 seasons to get to that point, though. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe I'm lying about that. Like, maybe it's not 2 seasons. Maybe 1 season can turn it around. But I think with the $80 million, in cap that you got to get cleared, and the fact that you don't have a lot of depth on this roster, in my opinion, I think 2027 is when you can start to get out of hell. 2025 is going to be hell. 2026, you can start to have fun. 2027 is when you're out of hell and you're excited about what you see from this team. There's nothing for sure. There's no straight line to success. There's no straight line to rebuilding a team. But that's how I feel right now. I just think it's going to take a long time. Trey Gift says, series of unfortunate events. Yeah, that should be the name of the Saints. Eric says, Fuaga got beat all day. We made their running back look like Emmitt Smith and gave him his first ever 100-yard game in the NFL. Just terrible on both sides. Yeah, when Amir Abdullah cooks you, it better be a college game. Better be when he's in Nebraska. When he cooks you and he's a vet in this league, not good. Yahtzee says, if we have Loomis pulling the strings, I don't trust any turnaround. I agree. T23 says, the Raiders were 30th in third down conversions coming into this game. Woof. Yep, 30th coming into third down conversions today, 10 of 18. 10 of 18. Ed says Amir Abdullah's been in the league 10 years and never had a 100-yard game. Well, he saw the Saints today and got one. Ain't that the damn truth? KJB412 says, sell the team. D23, the O-line has no pride in their game. They continue to let Rattler get decked and didn't even seem slightly bothered by it. I think guys have checked out. I think guys have checked out. Saints 41, you said that before. Saints, one of the worst run organizations in the NFL. Easy 37 says, even the Giants put up 45. Giants were cooking today. Man. Drew Lock had 5 total touchdowns. Malik Neighbors had over 150 plus yards. Giants were cooking today, man. Derek says the defensive tackles got bullied all game. Yeah, they get blown off the line of scrimmage every week. Every week they get blown off the line of scrimmage. It's the same thing. Forgive says Clint went from fans worried that he'll get a head coaching job to I'm pretty confident he won't be an NFL coach next season. Probably be an assistant somewhere. I do think he does good things from a run game's perspective. So, I think there is something to be said there, and the Kubiak family knows how to run the damn football. But this was not the audition you thought it would be. And I would love to go back and listen to some of those takes on like national TV where people are like, oh, pay attention to this name. Yeah, no, like it's not happening. He is just not at all the guy that we hoped he would be for New Orleans. He's been a bust in that regard. Ed says Juwan Johnson needs to go. He's trashed. The interior of the O-line is CFL level. You're right about that, Ed. Cliff says, so as I said at halftime, offense was inconsistent, 13 first downs, dropped the ball. Balls punched out, and the offensive penalties at crucial points during drives. B was shit from beginning to end. Yep, at least the defense was consistent, man. If you're going to be bad, be consistently bad all year. So I guess kudos to them. Carl Dunn says Rizzy is done. Joe Woods needs to go. Yeah, Joe Woods is ass. Always been ass, still ass. What are you going to do about it, man? But it's the truth. That's not a good football team right now. Defensively, the way they're run, not a lot to get excited about. Trayvon says we suck. D23 says Juwan needs to go somewhere. His lazy routes are the epitome of what he is as a player. In 2022, I really thought he was going to be a good football player. I thought he was turning the corner, and it's very clear that he isn't that dude, and pretty frustrating, obviously, that Juwan never got better. If anything, he just regressed. Saints 41 says Raiders were 3-12 on the road and dominated the Saints today. Also, I'm not sure we have a starting quarterback on this team yet. It's just Carr, and even that, you can't get excited about Derek Carr playing. Ed says, DeMario looks slow, but we can't get rid of these contracts, so same team next year. Yep. And that is the hell. That is the hell, by the way, that the Saints are in. You can't even just cut these guys. You're just going to have to just stomach another horrible season next year. Easy 37 says, bro, that defense was worse than the Bucs game. It felt that way. At least the Bucs hang a lot of points on a lot of teams, right? Like they put up 48 today against the Panthers. The Raiders have been shit all year long. And honestly, Raiders probably could have hung an easy 35 if they wanted to. DeBaum says it's just extremely hard for me to fairly evaluate Rattler. I mean, it's normal for a draft pick to be in the best circumstances, to not be in the best circumstances. I just want to see him once with a healthy offense. You're not getting that this year, that's for sure. Derek with a super chat says, should we have hired Eric B a few years ago? Personally, Derek, first off, appreciate the support. I don't think so. I don't think Bieniemy's a head coach in the NFL. I think, it would have happened if it was going to. What I would say is what the Saints shouldn't have done was after the first year with Dennis Allen, let him get his quarterback, because that made things 10 times worse. Now, it doesn't mean that Eric Bieniemy wouldn't have been better. He might have been. It's not hard to be worse than Dennis Allen, or better than Dennis Allen, excuse me. But I don't know if that would have been the solution. The Saints need a culture setter. Like that's why I'm not saying this is who I think the Saints have to hire, but if the Saints were to hire a Mike Vrabel, that's a guy that comes in and he knows he's going to set the tone. Even Aaron Glenn, like the one thing I love about Aaron Glenn is his leadership. I think Aaron Glenn sets the tone. But I would love if another GM picked Aaron Glenn. I don't want the Saints to pick Aaron Glenn just because they know Aaron Glenn because he's been on their staff. Like I don't love that idea. But I don't know if Eric Bieniemy would have done much. I think the Saints were destined for this spot anyway. I think the lesson should be this: when you have an all-time head coach quarterback duo and they leave, just take your medicine as soon as possible, because when you delay it, just like in life, if you don't take the right medicine, if you don't get the right treatment, you can have a situation where you get infected. Saints let shit get infected, and now they're at the point where they're a fucking joke. So that's just kind of where I'm at with this team and how I feel about it, David says the Saints defense is sponsored by AARP. Probably right, man. Probably right. They should start getting some geriatric sponsorships at this point in the year. D Modifier says we have no receivers. When Kamara goes down, we have no running backs. Without Taysom, we have no tight ends. Our O-line is hot and cold, and our whole defense sucks. That about sums it up, That about sums it up. True Saint says Gale needs to either sell or clean house, including Mickey Loomis. I agree. Gotta be one or the other. Cliff says, while I too like Spencer's performance today compared to past outings, I'm tempering my optimism simply because they played the Raiders today. But up until the fourth, much better showing from Rattler. Yeah, first like 3 quarters were pretty good for him. First 2.5, I should say. Because even the third quarter, right? Like the Raiders weren't playing. I mean, the Raiders, they were starting to blitz a little bit more, but I felt like the biggest problem with Saints was they couldn't catch a fucking ball. And maybe a couple throws were here off, a touch. Fourth quarter, I thought it unraveled, right? You send the house, you're not picking up the blitz. It looked like the Bucs game all over again. Then Rattler starts pressing and makes some bad throws. True Saint says need a new GM, head coach, quarterback, and basically a player for every position while being $69 million over the cap. David says Saints need a lot of draft picks, 1 or 2 guys not helping, need to trade back multiple times. I agree. Robert says just got worked and mocked by a 3-win team that got to NOLA 78 minutes before kickoff. No analysis from me here. Just wow. I think that's probably the best way to put it, Robert. Like, how can you sell this product? That's what happened today, right? A bad team had every excuse to just lay on the floor and get killed today. And yet they're the ones who did the killing. It's pathetic. Donald says, so why did we win those pointless Rizzy wins? I think it's pretty clear, right? Like, when the interim coach comes in, you get a little bit of life because you're so happy that the bad man is gone. And in this case, I guess the bad man is Dennis Allen. And when he left, you get excited. And I think for New Orleans, the schedule opened up pretty well, right? You got a Falcons team that was just about to hit, which, was unknown to everyone else at the time, but ends up being true. We're about to hit that slide with Kirk Cousins. And the Saints caught them at the beginning of that slide with Kirk Cousins. And then after that, who'd they get after? It was the Browns, right? Browns are a bad football team. As you see, they're a 3-win football team right now. And then their last win with Rizzy was against the Giants, who, let's be real, if the Saints played anyone else that game, they would have lost. Giants were god-awful and honestly wouldn't be surprised if they were tanking that game. So that's how it went. Yahtzee says if Rattler's a starter next year, fine. You'll be drafting your franchise quarterback in 2026. I agree with that. Donald says Saints also need to trade Kamara. He doesn't fit the timeline. We'll give him some salary relief and picks as well to allow him a chance to win. He's retiring a Saint. I mean, he got that contract. He's not going anywhere, Saints 41 says hire AG. He was with Dan Campbell with the Lions, complete rebuild. He's the guy that can do this. He knows how. It's possible. I'm for Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn's a good football coach and a good leader of men. I don't, though, know if he is going to fix this Saints team if it's with the same ownership group right now. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't want to dunk on Aaron Glenn. I think he's done some remarkable things this year with a defense that has been depleted due to injury. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I hope that if he is the guy, he just has the right front office around him and you get the right players to fit his vision. Because right now it's tough to trust those guys if that's the case, Hobbs C735 says this looks like a different team from a few weeks ago when they played the Commanders. They're all playing with no effort and like they don't even want to be out there. I agree with that. Look, the later you get in the season, you don't have any playoff hopes. I think it's natural for guys to kind of just put their foot on the brakes and either put it in cruise control or whatever. And it's not just the Saints, right? Like the Bears a week ago, DJ Moore is being asked about what the Bears need to do and what he's thinking about and how they can fix things. He said, I'm thinking about vacation. And now it's not right to say that, but a lot of guys have checked out. It's totally normal. It's frustrating, but what are you going to do? Like, shit happens, man. Walter says GM Loomis got to go. This team is old, overpaid, and mismanaged. Saints 41 says the injuries will not fall on Mickey, but this roster is. I agree. Paul says Raiders were up all night and still work the Saints. God knows if they even slept, right? They might have just went through and then just went from there, and that would have been enough. They didn't even get any rest against this team. Cliff says the lack of touch from Spencer is hard to watch. Agreed, Chris. Yeah, it's just not everything needs to be a fastball. And again, you take things in stride, you take the good with the bad, and you try to be fair of assessing a rookie quarterback in a really, really bad situation, especially a 5th-round quarterback. But those are things that have to change. Even if he has better, talent around him, you can't be beaming 98-mile-an-hour throws at everyone. It just doesn't work, man. Moonshine and Hollow Point says way too many high throws. That's how players get hurt in interceptions. We need playmakers and O-line. Truly, we need everything for real. Yep. Hav C735 says, I'm not giving up on Rattler. I think he still has potential, just needs more development in areas. I'm not going to argue with that. Like, I do think there is talent with Rattler, but I just don't know if he'll ever be the guy to get it fixed in New Orleans. I don't know if New Orleans would be the place for a young quarterback to kind of rise, above the ashes anyway. So that's kind of where I'm at. Don says Loomis, Lauscha, and Griffin need to go. I'd co-sign that. The Youngblood 46 says, whoever's named the head coach shouldn't retain anyone from this current staff. Bring in a brand new coaching staff. Start from scratch. I agree. I wouldn't want anyone from the staff there right now, man. It's just a black hole of nothingness for the Saints. That's what they've become. Hakeem says, I can't properly evaluate this kid with what we have around him. O-line is trash. Defense is trash. And the targets Rattler have are no good. Yeah, look, I understand. Joby says, can we stop trying to make Jawan Johnson happen? Yeah, I think the Jawan Johnson, experiment, if we want to call it, it's done. It's definitely done. I'm going to protest. F it, bro. It's the same shit every week. D23 says, you probably recall reading this comment from me 2 weeks ago, but Ruiz, 4 years in, still can't read a stump by the D-line. I do remember that comment, D23, and I'll tell you, we'll be back next week for you to drop this comment in because he'll get fucking beat by his stunt again. So we will revisit this for sure. Margaret says, I'm done with the Saints this year. Go Lions. I'm sorry I don't like any quarterback. You're right. The whole team is awful. Yeah, I'm like almost checked out from this NFL season. One more week left. Going to get through it, and then I'll start doing our off-season content, whether it's talking about coaching, acquisitions, drafts. Like, I'll get excited for that, and that'll bring me some excitement again. But this team, it's in dire, need of just a total facelift, honestly. T. Brady says, blow the whole fucking thing up. Cool Sports Rhyme says, Mickey Loomis, a poor man's Jerry Jones. Both of them are garbage at putting together a winning team, and both of them were made to look good by good head coaches. Except Jerry's got a lot more money. Donald says, Drew Brees made this entire organization look competent. Yeah, him and Sean did the thing, man. They did the thing. Nate 6 says, we need to trade everyone. And it won't work that way, which is, it's a frustrating aspect. Like, the Saints can't just blow this thing up like you've seen from, let's say, like an NBA team that blows things up, or, an NFL team that has a fire sale at the deadline. Just, you can't do it, man. It just doesn't work that way. And it's frustrating, Ed says, Chris, take a deep breath. We don't need your pressure going up. Look, I'm quiet during the game, so I got to get my frustration out somewhere. So here's the avenue for me to do that. Trey Gift says, owning another team's jersey is fucking weird. I don't care how bad we are. Yeah, that to me is a no. Look, I don't know where it come from. Oh, someone said they had a Jahmyr Gibbs jersey. Look, to everyone else, I can't tell people how to be a fan. Like, I don't think there's one right way to be a fan. But for me, I don't even get jerseys anymore, truthfully. Like, I'll get like generic Saints gear, or like if brands that I like do an NFL collab and they make Saints stuff like Kith or something, like I'm going to get a Saints Kiss shirt. Like that's the type of stuff I like to wear at this point. But, I wouldn't wear a jersey of another team, but to each their own, right? Like, I get it. Like, everyone's got favorite players. I feel like that's more of an NBA thing because the NBA has become a players league. NFL is more of like, you're still committed to your team, but again, to each their own. Donald says, needed a Travis Hunter type talent. You need about 10 Travis Hunters. Horace says, so we're not going to say nothing about how Rattler was about to get like 3 touchdowns, but everyone got called back by the O-line, but they only see the worst in Rattler. Look, it's, again, you take the good with the bad. I thought, and I said it before, like even the last drive of the game, you could call it garbage time. He's making some good throws down the field, getting excited about that. OPI gets one called back where you're inside the 5, next play's a pick. So it's kind of frustrating, It just feels like this is where the Saints have gone. 1 step forward, 2 step back. Doesn't mean that's who he is, but I definitely don't think he's shown us anything yet to say, oh, this is the franchise guy, or you definitely start him next year. It's just kind of where they're at. Shane says Saints don't have a number 1 receiver. Olave is at best a number 2 when healthy. Shaheed is number 3, and then maybe MVS is a 4. I mean, if you're trying to really build a monster, I kind of think that's how it's got to be. Ed says Kendra needs to get a non-physical occupation. He's glass. Ed also says, remember I said the Saints should have lost to the Giants, and if Daniel Jones played, they would have. This is the worst run team in the league. Yeah, I believe that too. I'm telling you, man, Giants were not trying to win that game when they played a couple weeks ago. Donald says, any beast running backs in the first round. I mean, if they go Ashton Genty, I think that would definitely give fans some hope in terms of, getting excited about the pick. That's about it. I don't think there was be any other guy, especially at that position, that you would get super excited about in the first round. Like, second round guys, you'll have your dudes. Hampton from North Carolina is pretty interesting. That's about it. Got a super chat here from Blair. Thank you for support, Blair. Says Cam hanging around longer, signing autographs. Read into that what you will. Yeah, I think Cam's done. And I don't know for sure. I kind of felt that way when he came into the facility today with his kids. I think he's played really well to end the season, which is nice. I think, at least if he were to hang his hat now, he goes out with some, a nice little hot streak to end the year. And I'll always love Cam Jordan. I think he's a great dude and a great football player. But does he want to sit around for a team that is not going to win anything anytime soon? And it stinks that he'll leave his career without a Super Bowl. A lot of dudes, unfortunately, get to that. But that's just kind of the way I read it as well. I think he's out of here and would not be surprised if we see him on TV next year. I think he would be very, very good at it, regardless of, of where he lands, whether it's an in-studio thing, whether it's, in the booth. I think that he'd have a lot of success. So I wish him well if this is the end for him. The guy's a Saints legend. There's no doubt about it. Be a Saints Hall of Famer. And honestly, might be a Pro Football Hall of Famer, depending on where he goes. Mo Better says it's time for Gail Betts to come out and address the congregation. Bad Juju says, I would love for Mickey to not be here anymore. Dudley says Saints and Pelicans deserve each other. AJ says, I swear you're the biggest Rattler hater ever. Is that referred to me? If so, I don't think I'm hating on the dude, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I have to go back and listen to how I sound. I just don't think he's that good. I think he's got a really great arm, but I don't think he's going to be the franchise guy. And again, that is because that's what I'm looking for. If we're looking for a fun story and we're looking for, something to get us through the rest of the season, then yeah, Rattler is fun, but fun doesn't equal good. And again, I'm not saying that he can't get better, because this idea that he can't get better is crazy. He could definitely get better. But there's nothing he's shown yet that has made me say this is a franchise quarterback. And if you guys are telling that to yourself, that's fine. Then you're not actually knowing what you're looking at, because right now we're not seeing a franchise guy. If he shows it, I'm going to be the first one to bang the table and be like, we got our fucking guy. Rattler's the truth. Let's do this thing. But right now, I just don't think he is that dude. Again, he's got time, though. Kasim says, Tillman Fertitta, the Houston Rockets owner, should just buy the team. I saw he was talking about it a couple days ago, or a week ago. I've lost track of time. But he said he had interest in the Saints. If they're willing to sell, he would make an offer. So who knows? Maybe that'll happen. Billy Ray Valentine says, are people still excusing Rattler? Look, I'm not going to get into a whole Rattler debate. I think he's got a great arm. I just think that there's not enough consistency at the most important position in football yet. And I know he's a rookie, so that makes sense. But it's the same issues every time. And when there is good, it always gets, kind of stomped out quickly, which absolutely stinks, because I want to see this dude play well. I think he's a real cool story, but just hasn't yet. Rob says, let's purchase a billboard near the dome saying sell the team. Gail, will that do it? I don't even know. I don't even know if that will get the job done. Billy Ray Valentine says the biggest issue will be to get the Saints under the salary cap. They have to restructure people, which means more void years added for more people. Yep. Same shit, man. It's going to be the same shit of just delaying the inevitable. And that part's going to suck. They're not going to be able to have an easy transition. You're going to have to run back kind of like the same team that you have right now. And to me, that's kind of ass. Kyle says Arch Manning will be here soon. We'll see. I don't know if he's going to be the guy. Wesley says the drops today were so brutal, especially from Jawan. That could have put them up 14-3. I'm tired of watching him play. He needs to go. Yeah, Jawan does need to go. No doubt. I'm done. I don't want to waste my breath on Jawan Johnson. He's become a dude that's just kind of crappy, man. Kind of crappy player. And I hate saying it, but it's the truth. John says, I'm late to the stream. What are your thoughts on the game, Chris? And where do you think we should go from here? What I think they should go from here is blowing it up in terms of the front office. You can't blow up the roster. You're kind of stuck. What you can do is get a new voice, new leadership group in the building. And the Saints obviously are going to get a new head coach. It's not going to be Darren Rizzi. I think that's okay. I think Rizzi's kind of fell off, and he's a great story, but I don't think he's a head coach for this team. So you're going to get a new head coach. But I think you need a new front office. And if the Saints are able to do that, at least you give that front office and that coaching tandem, 3-4 years, let's say 3, and you see if they can get you out of this hole. But that's kind of where I think the Saints have to go. As for the thoughts on the game, not much to get excited about. Like this was a really, really bad loss. A really bad loss. Got a super chat from Mel Mendoza. Thank you for the support. Says, I've seen better effort from a newborn horse trying to stand up for the first time. Throw Mickey Loomis into the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, effort-wise, I mean, it looked like the effort wasn't there in the beginning of the game. I mean, they gave up a 16 or 17 play drive. I forgot how many plays that drive was, but it ate up almost the whole first quarter. They did it again later in the game. They gave up a 97-yard drive. If you let Aiden O'Connell and the Raiders, with Amir Abdullah as their running back one, go down the field on a 97-yard drive, you got problems, man. You got problems, and nothing's going to fix that. So that's just kind of where we're at with New Orleans. Like, thankfully, one game left. It's almost over, and that's about it, Moonshine Hollow Point says, where the hell is Dallin Holker at? He looked great in training camp. They said, I don't know, man. Yeah, I think that's a good name to bring up. I was kind of hoping that Dallin Holker would emerge as an option at tight end this year. Hasn't been the case, obviously. So it is what it is. I thought maybe in the middle of the season he'd start to get reps. Tight end's a very hard position to kind of make that jump to. It's very hard. You get very lucky to see a guy like Brock Bowers, who is kind of like a generational prospect in his position, be as good as he is off the rip. But I thought Holker would do something towards the end of the year, especially because they don't have a good tight end group. So to not really see him make an impact at all is quite frustrating. You're definitely right about that. And it's a good name to bring up in a year where there's so much frustrating crap. It's easy to get lost in that, Easy37 says, if anything, Rattler's trying to make his receivers better by giving them hard passes. Cool Sports Rhyme says, please no Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, Joe Brady, Cliff Kingsbury, or Brian Flores, or Mike Vrabel. I guess those are the ones you want. I wouldn't want Cliff Kingsbury personally, but maybe he's learned. I just think he's the same dude. Always kind of flames out towards the end of the year. D23 says, wonder if they held that Carr so he wouldn't become the first player in the NFL history to lose to all 32 teams. I think they probably would have, I don't want to say win this game for sure, but they would have been better if Carr was in, no doubt. But what's the point in playing Carr? You got that injury guarantee. You don't need to win more games at this point, Grant says, these are the days that we feared. Post-Drew Brees, we're living in the darkest time in Saints history, I believe. I think it could get worse, I think it can get worse before it gets better, and I think it will get worse before it gets better. The reason the same team is in this situation is because of Sean Payton and Drew Brees in their final years. I don't know. I think that's kind of crazy in my opinion. I think what should have happened was the front office should have been smart enough to say, hey, we should have rebuilt. So I don't think you're blaming that on Brees and Sean Payton. I think that's more of a front office thing. So if that's the case, then I agree wholeheartedly with you. Like that, not accepting the rebuild is what fucked them. But if it is blaming on them, then I don't know if I would agree with that. Lance says, why are folks so desperate to anoint Rattler? He's a fifth rounder. We passed on multiple times. Everybody passed on him. We took him in the fifth, which is basically a throwaway. I think when you don't have hope, you're trying so hard to generate hope and optimism and something to latch on to. So that's the way I view it. And again, not a knock on Rattler. I think Rattler can eventually, maybe, just might not be with the Saints, develop into a starting quarterback. It's just right now he's not that guy. But since we don't have anything to hang our hat on and get excited about, of course we're going to kind of manufacture some sense of belief, and I think that's what it's been. Grant says, Saints sitting here watching the Vikings in a rebuild year, about to be 14-2, makes you want to throw up. We are so cooked. Vikings got their coach, man. D says, how can we evaluate Rattler with this group of players? I think things that he does, high throws, not changing up his throws, not being able to read the blitz, like those things you can evaluate. Now, we're also going to be fair. When Juwan Johnson drops the ball, I'm not putting that on Rattler. When Kevin Austin drops the ball, I'm not putting that on Rattler. When Adam Prentice drops the ball, I'm not going to put it on him. But you just take the good with the bad. And trust me, if he was a high pick and the Saints had a better team and he was playing like this, I would be a lot more animated about this discussion than I sound right now. But because he is a fifth-round pick and because the Saints don't have a good supporting cast around him, I'm not really going to get up in arms about it. I've accepted that shit just ain't meant to be right now. D23 says, did you see Breeze on NFL Red Zone Christmas Day? Seemed comfortable in the analyst role. I think that he's definitely getting more comfortable in broadcasting. I think there's two things for him. I think he might just be better at studio. Was really good on Monday Night Countdown for ESPN a month or two ago. And he was good on Christmas, I thought. He was just really bad in the booth. Like they did Notre Dame games and didn't work out. I think it's got to be an NFL situation and it's got to be a studio gig. I think that's where he'll probably thrive. Donald says front office thought we were a game manager away from being competitive and kept kicking the can. Kind of. Horace says when you don't have an offense, of course, Rattler didn't look good. Let him on let him on the field with all offensive starters. I bet he'll look like a better quarterback. I think he'll look like a better quarterback. I don't think that's a debate. Will he look like a starting quarterback? That's the question. And that one we haven't gotten answered yet, and we won't get answered right now. But that's the question. He'll definitely look better, right? Having Shaheed and Olave will make you better. But there's still questions that need to be answered. Kyle says Mickey Loomis will never admit he's the real reason for all the fuck up and the situation that the team is in, especially that he'll never move on from the 2009 Super Bowl run. Lance says first 2 rounds, offensive, defensive line, run stuffing, defensive tackle, trade for Crosby, 3rd and 4th, hire right coach, got to hire the right coach. Vrabel ain't coming. Glenn's not it for us. I call Saleh. We won't get better. Dude, Robert Saleh? It's just another Dennis Allen, in my opinion. Rattler's playing with the same people Carr has, besides like the first 2 games. I'm not a Carr fan, but he looks way better. I mean, yeah, Carr's a veteran quarterback. I don't think it's a discussion. Like, Carr is a better quarterback right now than Rattler, of course. But, having experience and just being in this league long enough, and Carr's a former 2nd-round pick and a 1st-round caliber talent, so I'm not surprised, but they just don't have that game changer at quarterback at the moment, and it's tough to elevate a bad roster and just no depth on this team. So hard to elevate all that, Marcus says Joe and Darren and Clinton and all the defensive offensive line suck and need to go, and Mickey Loomis needs to go too. It's kind of where I'm at, man. So if we have any more comments, guys, we'll get into it, and we'll also get into our closing argument. Before I do that, I want to get a quick word from DraftKings Sportsbook.
Getting some holiday shopping done this weekend? While you're at it, pick up some touchdowns. They're on sale at DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings has doorbuster profit boosts and bet one, get one promotions on all types of touchdown bets. Grab some TDs with DraftKings Sportsbook. They're on sale from Thanksgiving through Cyber Monday. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code BOOT to opt in. That's code BOOT, BOOT, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
Once again, thank you to DraftKings Sportsbook for being part of the program. Before we wrap it up, guys, I want to get into our closing arguments here, presented by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. I'll just kind of put a little recap on where I'm at with this Saints team. This has obviously been a frustrating season, whether it's the injuries, whether it's the losses, the coaching staff having to fire head coaches. I think for New Orleans, what needs to happen, regardless of next week, right? You're going to play the Buccaneers in your regular season finale. That game might not matter. If the Falcons lose tonight, I believe the Bucs are already in. So that game might not matter anyway. But regardless for New Orleans, I think the only saving grace will be if they make, top to bottom changes at the end of this year. If they move on from this entire coaching staff, if they move on from the GM, I think that's where you can at least say it's a win. If you keep running it back and the guy who has put you in this hole is still running the show, it's tough to get excited about this team. So as bad as it's been, as frustrating and dejected as we've all been because this is such an embarrassing product, maybe it leads to big changes. If it does that, maybe that leads to us sooner than later actually being happy and having joy watching the New Orleans Saints. But until then, it's going to be really frustrating. One more game to go. We'll have our halftime show. We'll have our post-game live stream, and we'll have a couple of pregame things before into that. So make sure you guys subscribe to Boot Crew Media and also stay tuned for more content here from the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.